All right, you guys, with no further ado, thank you for being here with us today. We come to you every single Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, exclusively live here on Chatter. And after that, the podcast goes live on all the other platforms and it gets streamed every single week. So today we have a very special guest, and I'm not going to introduce him like usual. I'm going to hand that over to Wendy. What I'd rather do is introduce my co host and myself. My name is Daphne Christine. You're with none other than the Credit Ninja and Wendy Butler. And I'm going to pass it over to her because, like I said, she has a special relationship. And I think that I would probably not do it justice. Over to you, Wendy.
Well, thank you. And yes, we want to welcome Jim Sullivan. And I do have a relationship with Jim. He is our financial advisor. Rhett introduced me to Jim several years ago. And I have really learned a lot just listening to you, Jim, over the years. And then, of course, we've had you on the show previously because you've really narrowed down your niche into cryptocurrency. It seems to be the thing that you really like to talk about. So I said, oh, good, let's have him back on here. So many things happening in crypto right now with the new administration. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about where you went to school, how you got into crypto, where, I know that you had got your undergrad in University, was it Colorado? And then you went to got your MBA in San Francisco.
Yeah, University of San Francisco, correct.
Mhm.
I'll just jump in real quick. Let me just say something real fast. This is not financial advice. So my attorneys are telling me I'm going to talk about a new asset class. It's very exciting. There's a lot of opportunity here, but without signing you on as a client, this is really just a discussion of this new asset class. It's not financial advice. So what Wendy said is correct. I have an undergrad at the University of Colorado, graduate degree from the University of San Francisco. My work on Wall Street has been on both the buy side and the sell side. So I worked for an investment firm in New York where we actually bought investments for our clients, which is what I do today. And I also worked on the sell side where we sold ideas to clients as a stockbroker, basically. So I've had an opportunity to be on all sides of the spectrum of the financial services world. About 12, 13 years ago, I left it all and decided I could do it on my own and started my own firm called Sullivan Wood Capital Management. And that's what Wendy and Rhett are clients of mine. And the focus of my firm is a value investor looking for good stock ideas that we can buy over 3, 5, and 10 years. And I don't care where they come from. I mean, we own quite a bit in technology. We own banks. We can own anything we want, any asset size, small, large, in between. Part of my job is not just to find investment ideas, it's also to find new technologies that are being developed. And that is what digital assets are, right? And I'm going to tell you, not everybody believes that. And I run into people all the time who still think it's smoke and mirrors. It doesn't have any validity. There's nothing behind it. There's no value added. And you have to understand and learn that this is a macro asset. So if you don't mind, I'm going to take like 5 or 10 minutes just to talk a little bit of kind of like where digital assets came from, more specifically Bitcoin, and then where we are today. I kind of look at it like now and then. You ever see shots on Chatter or Twitter where they say this is what something was like then and now? Because we've had a massive shift in the last 7 days since Trump was inaugurated in the digital asset space. Let's go back 16 to 17 years where Bitcoin was launched. It was a white paper written by a guy, Satoshi Nakamoto, and nobody really knew what it was. But it came out during the great financial crisis of 2008, where banks were being bailed out by the US government. Banks were being bailed out by our money, right? And they wrote this technology to create 21 million Bitcoin, and that would be all will ever be made. It's a hard currency that would keep you from having your dollar debased. So that's how it started. Nobody really knew what it was. Nobody understood what it was. There were a handful of people that started to buy it at the 1 cent, $1 range. I'll tell you a funny story. I said this on the last podcast that I bought 10 at 100 and sold them at 1,000, having no idea what I was buying. Right. Since then, I've learned quite a bit. So what happened over the time was Bitcoin was launched, and unfortunately, like most new technologies, similar to the internet back in the 90s, it was used for a lot of nefarious reasons. Some of you may have seen some headlines recently about a guy who owned a company called Silk Road, and he was just recently pardoned by President Trump His name's blanking on me. If you know, you're welcome to bring it out. Again, it was used in a lot of nefarious ways back in 2010 into 2012. And new technologies are used that way often. It happened with the internet when it first came out. It was used in a lot of odd ways. As it progressed and started to grow and the technology started to take off, investors like me started to take notice. We were getting phenomenal returns, 500 to 1,000% a year returns. So I wanted to understand, what is this? All right. So I spent some time to dig into understanding what it was. And about 6 years ago, I started to realize there's something larger going on here than just Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is going to be the digital gold, the main technology that drives the digital assets. But new forms of digital assets were being launched. There was Ethereum, there was XRP, there was Litecoin. All of these have technologies underlying that. Ethereum is like buying Microsoft DOS 50 years ago. You couldn't buy Microsoft DOS. It was owned by Microsoft. Today, you can own the foundational property of a technology where digital assets or blockchain technologies will be built on. And we'll talk about more about this in a minute. I'm just trying to give you an idea of where it came from and where we are today. So let's go 4 years ago. Digital assets have exploded. Bitcoin's gone up to $96,000 in value from basically zero, and it's starting to be used as digital gold. A new administration came in under Biden, and they brought in a new SEC chairman by the name of Gary Gensler. Right? Everybody was really excited for Gary Gensler to become SEC chair. He had taught digital assets and blockchain at MIT. We thought for sure he would come in and bring in all kinds of new regulation. It was completely the opposite. This has been the worst 4 years for digital assets. Again, this is only a 16-year-old project, but the last 4 years, instead of being full of new regulation, new ideas, development of new projects, it was the word what they use now is they litigated versus regulated. Every time somebody would come up with a new great idea, there would be a lawsuit thrown by the SEC, backed by the administration, that would really just lock down the fact that there were great technologies being built. And it was really frustrating to those who are in the industry. In the meantime, there was a lot of fraud, right? FTX, we all may know that story. Sam Bankman Fried gave a lot of money to politicians, got in the back pockets of a lot of people. He was running a Ponzi scheme, he's in jail. Genesis, same thing. Lent out a lot of money on Bitcoin, weren't able to make payments on it. Those problems went away. So, what should have happened over the past 4 years, unfortunately, didn't happen the way you would have liked to see. And unfortunately, the whole concept of this new technology was kind of through a really difficult time and kind of got thrown onto the back burner. What really happened? It went offshore, right? These developers and technologists went to different countries and started to develop their technology where those countries would allow them to be more open, allow them to develop a lot of these projects that they wanted to do. So that was frustrating for the industry, and it was hard for the industry to deal with. And during that time, a lot of companies went out of business for a number of reasons. One, there was some fraud, and two, they just didn't have anywhere to grow. There was just nowhere. Why would I run my business in the U.S. when all I'm going to do is get sued and get brought up under charges for not following legislation from the 1930s that was based on looking at stocks and wasn't a security when you have this whole new asset class of digital assets coming out and nobody knew how to understand it.
Well, I have a question for you, Jim. Why do you think that Gensler and the Biden administration were so against it and going into litigation, as you said, instead of regulation? And why do you think that the Trump administration is moving forward with regulations? Can you explain that to us?
Yeah. So again, there's a lot of opinions, right? And this is just mine. But when you have a new technology, people don't understand, and it's being used in a lot of nefarious ways. It was used by a lot of terrorists. It was used by a lot of hackers. It was used by FTX. It was used by Silk Road. People didn't understand it, and unfortunately, they didn't take the time to say what's happening here. We have this brand new technology. We need to understand it. Instead, they attacked it. And if you really think about what Bitcoin's going to do, it's money for the people. It is the most progressive money in the world. It can be anywhere, any place, anyhow. It is decentralized, peer to peer. Nobody can stop you from sending to anybody you want. Good luck trying to do that with your bank. Matter of fact, the current administration is about ready to start a investigation into the whole banking system, where a lot of people were not allowed to bank because of either their political background or, for example, the marijuana industry. You can't bank in the US if you grow marijuana, even though it's legal in many states. So going back to your question, it's a good question. They were concerned about how it would affect the banks. The other side of the digital asset space is something called decentralized finance, where, like I just mentioned to you, we're going to have the ability, our kids especially, are going to have the ability to send money anywhere around the world without anybody telling them what to do, permissionless. You can't do that with your bank. Your money goes to your bank. They see where you move bank. I know your husband Rhett's a very big poker player. There's a famous poker player named Daniel Negreanu who had his money at Bank of America. Well, he's moving $500 million in cash in and out of his bank. Bank of America fired him. They asked him to move off the platform. You know what? Every single CEO of every bank called him right after that they wanted his business. But you see where I'm getting at? If weren't sure what was happening, so they were very very afraid of it. So, like I was saying earlier, that was then. What just happened in the last 7 days? Go back to Trump while he was running for president. He went down to Tennessee and Nashville and he spoke to the Bitcoin community. I wasn't there, but I watched it. He said, I'm going to bring Bitcoin and digital assets back to the United States. I'm going to make it a priority that this is an American technology, right? That's something the Democrats didn't say. Big mistake. I happen to be a Democrat. I voted Kamala, right? Can't believe that this was something that they ignored. Brilliant move by Trump. He wins the presidency. He comes in and he immediately makes changes. I wrote down. There's a new SEC head, right? The new acting commissioner, Mark Uveda, he was on the SEC, but he was a very big proponent of digital assets. He's already dropped pretty much all the lawsuits. So start with the SEC, with a new acting chair. The incoming chair has already called this the golden age of digital assets. He's already proposed a commission of 20 people in the digital asset space to get together with the Trump administration to talk about ways we can regulate, manage, and control digital assets. Let's understand what it is and grow it. I mean, this is a technology, right? It is going to displace the way currencies are used around the world because it's permissionless and can move anywhere and can send it from person to person. There's a new CFTC head. There's a new FDIC head. All of them pro digital assets. All of them have said we're going to come in and under our guidance, the FTC or the FDIC, and come up with new rules and regulations. Let me give you one really cool thing that's just happened that nobody understands, but they're not talking about it now. The FDIC, right? The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. They control your bank deposit. If you were a bank over the last 16 years, especially the last 4 years, and you wanted to buy Bitcoin, let's say you wanted to buy $100 million of Bitcoin, you had to keep $100 million of cash on your balance sheet to support that Bitcoin. Well, if you're a bank, you don't want to do that. Banks want to loan money out. They don't want to keep it in as collateral against Bitcoin. There's an accounting rule called SAB 121 that got voted down in the House and the Senate last year. It was just overturned 2 days ago. So now any bank can buy any size amount of Bitcoin. They can pay, say $100 million worth. They buy it. They bring it on their balance sheet. They can loan it out in any size they want. But if you're a banker, that's great. So big banks, Bank of America, JP Morgan, they've already talked about buying Bitcoin and using it as collateral against any sort of asset. So just think about that. That change alone is dynamic. Michael Saylor, I don't know if you guys know of him, but he's probably the third largest Bitcoin holder in the world. He said three things are going to happen in digital assets going to change it. And number two was this rule, this regulation, SAB 121 being overturned, and it absolutely just happened. So that is a massive opportunity for Bitcoin now to be placed on balance sheets of banks all around and for that matter, all around the world. Because when the U.S. goes somewhere, other countries do the same. So you've seen in the last 6 or 7 days just a real excitement around new regulations to manage and to understand, and more importantly, a commission. We've never had a commission to look at what's going on in the space and come up with ideas that can be pro digital assets, that can get developers back in the US to build projects on Solana, to build projects on Ethereum, to build real solid solid, a growing projects. And then on the SEC, there's a crypto task force that's looking at all of the policies that have been put through over the past years to either overturn them or come up with new policies to help regulate the space. There's a lot of excitement. And then I'll leave it with real quick. Like my friend said, you're starting the golden age of digital assets because truly in the next 3 to 6 months, 3 to 4 years, you're going to see a lot of change. And that's going to be very, very positive for the digital asset space. So I hope I kind of laid out a little bit of like kind of where we were and kind of where we are today. And it's only been what, 7 days?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I thought of something else. I just forgot what it was. But my friend was at the crypto. One of my very good friends runs one of the biggest crypto banks in the world, investment banks. And he was at the crypto ball. And he said it was a who's who of who are people in the crypto community, and the excitement was just palpable. I mean, he said it was just fantastic. So there are tremendous opportunities. You're going to see the rollback of a lot of policies, and you're going to see the incoming new regulations that are positive, help control and manage the space. Let me just say one more thing before I open up the question. I thought this was really interesting. I know a lot of you guys are more to the right than I am. Most likely voted for Trump, which I think is great. There was a guy on MSNBC whose name is Van Jones, big Democratic strategist, very well known. He was having a discussion about cryptocurrency on the panel, and most of the people on the panel were like from the old administration. This is all criminal product. It's used by bad actors. He said, if you think about what Gary Gensler could have done over the past 4 years, we could have had regulation, we could have had policies, we could have had good understanding of what crypto assets are and how we can manage them. Today, we wouldn't have 50,000 tokens launched. You wouldn't be able to launch a token without it going through the proper crypto regulatory and guidance and understanding. Now there's no rules. No rules. My doorbell's ringing and my dog's in a bark. So just give me. And this is why Trump launched the Trump token. He launched that token 3 hours after Gary Gensler resigned, and it exploded and did extremely well. I personally, I told Wendy I wouldn't buy it, but if you really believe in the Trump administration, you think there's some great things going on, and it probably are, you have an opportunity to buy his token, and if he does really well, you can participate in the upside of his presidency. Besides that, I don't think there's a whole lot of value there. There are at least 50,000 tokens out there right now that have absolutely no value. I don't think this would have happened had we had the proper regulation 3 or 4 years ago. And we're getting that today. So I'll leave it at that. I'll take on any questions that
I have a question. So I met with Michael Saylor a few years ago at a Bitcoin event in LA called Bitcoin. It's in Santa Monica. So it was held by Swan Bitcoin, one of the largest companies out there, and they sponsored the event. But he's involved in a strategy, right, micro strategy, where he fundraises and then he uses that money to buy Bitcoin. He keeps stacking up, and it's actually going down in price now. What is your observation to why this stock value has gone down over time? Shouldn't have gone up. I mean, he's literally using investor money to buy Bitcoin. What's your thought?
Yeah. So first of all, without being overly excited, it's effing brilliant. I don't even know what to begin. Brilliant this guy is. What he has captured, and I wanted to talk about this, and I kind of forgot it. Bitcoin started out as digital gold, right? It was going to replace the concept of gold, and it will in some ways. And remind me in a second to talk about the Bitcoin strategic reserve, because that's something else I wanted to talk about that Michael Saylor talks about. But he realized about 4 years ago that Bitcoin is really digital real estate, right? And if you look at what happened, Louisiana Purchase, Manhattan, look at real estate in Manhattan. For the most part, it's only gone up. So since the U.S. bought the Louisiana Purchase, the value of that real estate has only gone up. So what he's seeing is there's only 21 million Bitcoin available. Much like there's only so much land in Manhattan to build. That's why there's 55, 100 skyscrapers in Manhattan, right? You can't build any larger. As that value. So what he's trying to do is use any financial instrument he possibly can to buy as much Bitcoin as he possibly can. What he said he's done to this company, MicroStrategy, kind of dead in the water as a software security company, is he's transformed it into what he calls a Bitcoin development company, much like a real estate development company, but he owns Bitcoin. He's buying the real estate of Bitcoin because there's only going to be so much Bitcoin that's out there. So what he's done is exactly that. He's done convertible notes, and if you want to get into the weeds on what a convertible note is, I can talk about it. Um, he's done equity sales. He's doing whatever he can. He's done preferred sales to buy Bitcoin. Now, stocks just don't go straight up. I mean, if anything, I learned that from yesterday. My portfolios were down 3.5%, right? His stock got to about $500, got pretty, I guess now down around like 350. I didn't look at it today. I can't give financial advice, but I think what he's doing is absolutely brilliant. And that over time, the stock will most likely go up in value. I mean, I happen to own, and Wendy and I read stock in another company who's gone down 25% in 4 days. That's only the market dynamic, the overall market as a whole. And part of that happened because of this deep seek that just came out that put a little bit of a question mark over the AI space. Why that affected Bitcoin or MicroStrategy, I don't know. But if all my stocks just went up every year, I'd live on an island somewhere by myself.
Good point. Yeah. Well, yeah, I was really curious because I saw that deep sink was being, the fingers were all pointing to it as the reason that for all the stocks dropping yesterday. And I'm looking at what it does, and I was really confused on why it was being blamed for that. I mean, what is your take on that? It was, I mean, in my opinion, it was just another version of an AI company. However, it was based out of China, and from all reports that I saw, it wasn't even as good as what everyone else is saying. Chat GPT and all the others were. But anyway, what did you think about all that?
I mean, from an investment perspective, I call it reversion to the mean, right? So when stock's going to go up, I think MicroStrategy was up 30% this year. Like in like a 25 days. So there's going to be a reversion back to the mean where the stock price is going to sell off a little bit. It just happens. I mean, go back to 2000. Amazon had $100 stock. It went to five. And today it's 3,000 split adjusted. So when you find something unique like this, like a MicroStrategy, you have an opportunity to buy it at these prices, and you have a 5 or 10 year time frame. Don't worry about the day to day, or as we like to say in my industry, zoom out, right? Look at the bigger picture, because the bigger picture is quite impressive of what's going on. It's very rare. And I don't think it's ever happened in my lifetime that you have an asset like this that has a limited amount of supply and is going to have an insatiable amount of demand. And when you think about that from an economics perspective, I'm not even allowed to say this, but it's going higher, right? And so going back to MicroStrategy, I think what he's doing is absolutely brilliant. There will be times when the stock 20, 30, 40%, probably not 40, but to a point where it becomes attractive again. And in my business, I'm not a trader. I mean, Wendy, you've been with me for years. We've had ups and downs, but for the overall returns have been spectacular.
Yes, most definitely.
Just ignore the noise and focus on the prize, right? And that is Bitcoin. But his Michael Saylor's analogy of real estate is really, really spot on. I mean, you think about what I'm saying. There's only 21 million, right? 4 million are lost. 12 or 13 million have been mined. There's only 3 to 4 million that are out there. What are there? 450 millionaires in the country? 450,000 millionaires, sorry, in the country. I mean, doesn't take much for the supply to come in and buy a lot of it up. Um, uh, Bitcoin is going to go higher. I don't want to comment specifically on MicroStrategy, but I think you can kind of get my point.
So he owns about what, over 3% of the supply worldwide, right? That's what I heard.
Well,
Over 3 point something. Pretty big.
two ways to look at it. It's about 2% of the supply because he owns about 400, maybe 500,000 Bitcoin, maybe 2.5% of supply. But 4% of that supply was lost. So there's really only 17 million Bitcoin that are out there now. So yes, he probably at this point owns about 3% of the supply. You know who the holder of Bitcoin is?
Sorry?
You know who the second largest holder of Bitcoin is?
Who is that?
I'll give everybody a Power Hour business cup if you can answer the question.
BlackRock? I don't know.
Oh, that's a good guess.
The U.S. government.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
They able
Why
to
they confiscate it?
confiscated it from Silk Road
Yes.
Chase the bug.
He wins.
back in 2008. And this brings up the whole strategic Bitcoin reserve conversation, because now the U.S. being the second largest holder of Bitcoin, they have it on their balance sheet. It's actually at the DOJ, right? And you have assets like this that are recovered through some kind of fraud or something. They go to the DOJ and they sell them off, and they use them to usually pay back their people who took the losses. In this case, using it to buy and sell drugs. It's sitting on their balance sheet. Biden administration sold some of it. They moved it off chain where they were going to sell the rest of it and never did. So there's talk in the Bitcoin community about, all right, now we're going to hold, I think it's going to be about $5 to $6 billion worth of Bitcoin, maybe some more than that. And the talk has been, would the president come out with an executive order to create a Bitcoin strategic reserve? And there's a senator out of Wyoming, Cynthia Loomis, who has already written up legislation. Now, remember, the president just can't make an executive order and buy it, right? He has to go through Congress. So right now, there's a lot of talk in Congress about trying to approve a Bitcoin strategic reserve. And I'm a believer, of which many of the Bitcoin, prophets are, that if we did that, just like in the 1930s, after the Great Depression, we bought gold and we back the US dollar. We do the same thing with Bitcoin, and it runs up to $10 million, and the US government owns 1.5 million Bitcoin. That's 15 trillion. Outlandish to think that there's a possibility that this could go from 100,000 to a million or to 10 million over 5, 10, 15 years. Matter of fact, if you ask Michael Saylor, he thinks it's going to 30 million. The third largest holder in the world, so of course he's going to say that.
Yeah. Yeah. He's wanting to already think it and everybody jump on board with him.
To have people
Sure.
look at Bitcoin as a reserve asset, as a backstop to the US dollar. Because all you've seen over the past 100 years is the value of the US dollar just continually get devalued. You've seen it, it's a inflationary asset, where Bitcoin is not. So just like gold, at the time when the gold was bought back in the 1930s, we thought limited supply. Turns out that wasn't the case. That is the case with Bitcoin. So the concept of a Bitcoin strategic reserve is another catalyst that could potentially drive the price of Bitcoin. Can you imagine if they were to make an announcement they were going to the U.S. buy a million Bitcoin? It'll go to 250,000. It'll go to 300,000. I don't think this administration would make that announcement until after they've done it. Right? I mean, one thing I'll give Trump credit for, I don't give him credit for a lot. That's just me. That he is not. He does not. He's very strategic when it comes to talking about aspects of his administration. He'll talk about it after the fact, which he should. He talks about what's going to happen in the war in Ukraine. He doesn't really talk about it until there's an answer to the solution. Or
Hey, Jim, I have a question for you. Would you recommend to all the people in the audience that if they didn't have at least 10% of their portfolio on some sort of crypto-based company, that they're missing the boat?
yeah, I mean, I can't really answer that question honestly, Rhett, because I can't. Again, like you and Wendy, our clients, we can talk about it because we have a contractual agreement. I get myself in a little bit of trouble talking about what you should do or don't do with your money. As I said at the beginning of this is really a discussion. It's not financial advice, but I think Rhett, you're definitely onto something there.
I would like to mention, Nigel or Paul, could one of you guys put Jim's information where people can find Jim? We don't have that posted at the top. If one of you guys don't mind doing that for us, appreciate that.
Hey, Wendy, we have some links in the chat. I'm not sure what's going on with the pin at the top, but we got some links in the chat, ways they can contact Jim.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Nigel. I appreciate that.
I sent you guys. So there's a really great Twitter account called Galaxy HQ. If you guys want to write this down, and a guy who it's a company called Galaxy Digital. They're the head of their research is a guy named Alex Thorne. And he puts out on Twitter a research piece every week. He just wrote one. I have it here right in my hand. Actually, I printed it out And he talks about what happened in crypto in the last 7 days, starting Monday, January 20th, from the day of the inauguration. He calls it Trump to make USA the crypto capital of the world. And it's fascinating the changes that have gone on over the past 5 days. Just everything, the amount of enforcement actions that have been dropped by the SEC and the DOJ against people in the industry, what he expects to see happen. He talks a lot about SAB 121 that I was just telling you about, the accounting law. He talks about Cynthia Loomis with her Bitcoin strategic reserve bill. Matter of fact, there's a new Senate banking subcommittee on digital assets. We never had that before. Just think, if 4 years ago, instead of just coming out with, litigate versus regulate, if they had set up a subcommittee on digital assets, let's just talk about it. What is this? Maybe we wouldn't have gone through what we went through over the past 4 years. Now, I understand where they're coming from, right? They didn't understand this. They were trying to protect investors. Meanwhile, under his watch, we saw more frauds and more bankruptcies in this space that maybe there's something they've done about it. Obviously, they're prosecuted after the fact. These guys will be in jail for a long time and deserve to be. This is something, if you really want to learn more about it, he goes really granular into some of the different changes that are occurring, well as it's just a great piece.
Yeah, I've seen some documentaries about some kids that started a coin and just got on the phone and started selling it. Had absolutely no bearing. They none of them went to Harvard. They said put on their website they went to Harvard. So we obviously need some regulation in place for things like that. But I'm curious to know, where do common people like me find information about these coins that come out? For instance, the Trump coin that came out. Well, by the time I found out about it, was on NBC or whatever news station I was watching, and all the money had been made, and of course I was in the dust by then. So, where do you recommend people? I know that you mentioned the one Twitter account that, or X, I guess is we call it now, but where else do you recommend that we stay up to date on what's happening and what uh, regulations that are coming into play and all of those kind of things?
Yeah, let me just step back and tell you that when the Trump coin was launched at 9:45 at night, at the night of the crypto ball, I had a lot of friends there, and they were all totally in the dark. There was not a single person who knew that this was launching. And they sat there and they watched it go up and up and up and up and turn something, went up 10,000% in a matter of short period of time. To be honest with you, they were quite upset, most of them in the community, for two real reasons. One, nobody told them, right? Because they would have liked to be involved and had a chance to make some money. But two, this is something that never should happen. I don't mean there's anything wrong with Trump launching a coin, but had they created regulation over the past 4 years, you would have had to go through a lot of hoops. And those hoops put you in a situation when you launch a coin to announce where it's going to be launched, when it's going to be launched, and allow people to also participate in it. Because the only people that really participated in the very launch of that were the insiders who were involved in creating it and launching it. And I don't know how many people there were, but there were a lot of people who made a lot of money. And a guy like myself or Wendy and other people who I follow it very closely had no idea this was being launched. And there are lots of places where you can create a token, and they launched it on the Solana, and so it's really hard. You could launch your own, Wendy, and if you had enough followers, it might do well, it might not. But most of your friends would own it, and that's sort of what shouldn't happen in the space. With that said, they were ecstatic because token got launched, incredibly successful on the Solana blockchain, worked. People were able to transact, buy and sell. It drove the entire cryptocurrency market down because the Trump coin just took the air out of it. All the other tokens went down in value as everybody was trying to buy the Trump coin, but it worked. So people are looking at this going, all right, this isn't necessarily what we wanted to see happen. Yet the next time we tokenize an asset that has real value, it works. And I'll give you an example of tokenization, that a company that I know called Galaxy Digital just recently tokenized a very famous Stradivarius violin. And it was owned by Russian queens. It's worth like $20 million, owned by a very wealthy Japanese fellow. And Galaxy tokenized it. So they took it in as a token. They now own that violin, and they lent to the owner of that violin $4.5 million. So they're using it as an asset, as collateral. If he doesn't make payments on the $4 million, they now keep that violin as collateral. They could fractionalize that Stradivarius, and all of us could have an opportunity to buy it. And if a piece of art like that becomes a $50 million Stradivarius, valued at $20 million, we all have an opportunity to be a part of that. That's the concept of tokenization that you're going to see more and more. This is one of those new things that's going to be launched. It's already happening, but it's going to happen more and more over the next 2, 5, and 10 years. Matter of fact, Larry Fink, who's the chairman of BlackRock, was in Davos over the weekend, and all he talked about is he wants to see the tokenization of stocks, bonds, and commodities. Right.
Me too, I'm hearing.
The concept there would be if you own an Amazon stock and you want to buy a millionth share of it just swaps. You take your Amazon stock and you sell $20,000 worth, and you swap it for the Stradivarius token. That's where the idea of tokenization is going to come into play. That's getting a little bit granular, but I think you understand the concept of where we're headed in the digital age, and that's what we need to understand: how to regulate, manage, control, and process that type of business. It's pretty fascinating.
Well, you know what that reminds me of, James, back about 15, 20 years ago, they had different trades where you could trade services and products for each other. But the only problem was the taxation. How do you value the trade between the product or service, and who's going to regulate that? And that's the only thing I see when you cross over stocks versus physical products or art, and then doing that transfer, someone got to get involved to find out, okay, who's the in between person? What is the taxation? I mean, this is going to be a bit complicated.
Yeah, so that's where tokenization solves that problem. So think about what you just said. Let's talk about my idea of swapping Amazon for the Stradivarius. Right? I sell $20,000 of Amazon stock, and I use the blockchain to buy $20,000 in Stradivarius. Okay, I've sold my Amazon. I have to pay a capital gain there, right? Whatever that might be. There's now a transaction history of me buying that Stradivarius. You couldn't do that 25 years ago. There was no history. Now you have an actual transactional history. It's called a hash transaction. It's a code of numbers and letters that is that actual transaction. So that goes into your wallet. You now own $20,000 in that Stradivarius. If I sell that at $50,000, I have a $30,000 gain. It's all on the blockchain. It's all right there for everyone to see. As a matter of fact, going back to the concept of digital assets being used by terrorist organizations, being used by hackers, the reason why it did happen a lot from 2008 till last 4 or 5 years is because of that transactional case. If I give you $100,000 in cash, you and I know I gave you $100,000. But what you do with it, I have no idea. Right? So you could take that money and launder it. If I give you $100,000 in Bitcoin, there's a transaction link between you and me. If you then it goes in your wallet. If you then send it to 10 different people, $10,000 each, to Hamas and to all these other organizations, there's a transaction that has you giving that money to that wallet. If that wallet's a terrorist organization, it is very easy to track. And this is why many terrorist organizations like Hamas and Hezbollah have asked to stop sending us money via Bitcoin or digital assets, because it's literally trackable. I mean, one of the largest FBI, I think of the word, well, Silk Road is one where they were able to grab all that Bitcoin. But there was a couple in New York City, a young couple who hacked one of the exchanges. They took $500 million of Bitcoin. They put it in a wallet, and it sat there. And the FBI knew it, but it just sat there. They didn't know who owned it. One day, they tried to take like $50 million out of there and move it to another wallet, and they caught them. Because once it got moved from a wallet to another wallet, they knew exactly where it came from. So it's very easy to track digital assets. So going back to your question, it's a really good one. You can see where the blockchain technology can start to track taxable situations on a illiquid asset like a Stradivarius. By tokenizing it and fractionalizing it, you get the ability to participate in that. It can happen with real estate.
Yeah. Well, do you think that that might be one of the reasons why there are a lot of people out there that don't want this to become a way of purchasing things because they don't want everyone to know exactly what they're doing, even if it's legal, a legal transaction. Just say, and this is what I'm hearing because of how China went to their digital currency and they have their own coin. And so a lot of US citizens were concerned that we're going to go to the US coin and they don't like it because the government's going to be tracking everything we're doing. So what do you think about that?
100%. I mean, what the digital asset community wants to create is its own decentralized stablecoin that can be used by you and me, but it's not controlled by the US government or any government. Because if you have a US government backed stable coin, which tracks the dollar, and I go out and I buy something for $100, they're going to see that transaction. They're going to know every single transaction you make. So there's a battle, and it's sort of a lefty righty battle, right? Over how do we manage this process of having decentralized stable coins? There's a bunch of them out there right now. Tether is one, Circle is another. Look up Tether and Circle. I mean, Tether, by the way, they have like almost $1 billion in a stable coin, and it's in US treasuries, and they made something like $3 billion last year off their treasuries, and they have like 20 employees. And they made Morgan made in a quarter. Like it's crazy what the opportunities are. But the concept of digital assets is to displace the middleman, just like you said. And there are a lot of people out there right now looking at this saying this is not what they want to have happen because this is going to displace our business. It's going to displace the need to have a bank.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and limiting, and it's kind of interesting how you were saying before that people are limited by banks on what you can do and not do. And I noticed that even sometimes you're limited by how much money you can put into a bank. Not, I mean, I didn't know there was a limit on how much you could put in, but some banks were even limiting. And so in this way, you can do your transactions and there's no limits.
Right. I mean, you know what's the fastest way to move $10 million between here and London?
What's that?
Get on a plane with a bag of $10 million, you fly over there and you take it to the bank. By the time it gets approved in the US to ship it, you send it in a wire transfer. The wire transfer takes 2 days to be verified. And they
Mhm.
credit it to your account, right? With a digital asset, it happens in seconds, right? Because it's already credited in your wallet to begin with. It just shows up in the other wallet. It's there. We're not quite at the point yet where, well, people are willing to trust that size of transaction, but we're going to get there. And a lot of what I talked about are things that are technologies that are going to happen in the next 5, 10, or 15 years. They're not happening today. They're being built today. Many of them have been built and they failed so far. Nobody's been able to create, the developer out there hasn't been able to create something that's a really decentralized wallet or decentralized finance company. Lots because they got sued. They started to create this DeFi product, and then the token it was built on would go up on legal charges. So it'll be interesting to see. Like I said, we're 7 days into this administration and this whole new policy toward digital assets that it looks pretty
Well,
promising.
James, let's talk about that Swift thing. That's now no longer Swift because it was broken at one point. I don't remember what day. A few years ago, it was shut down for hours, and people couldn't send wires. It was really broken, and now they're trying to implement XRP as a way to send money quicker and more efficiently and less expensive. And what are your thoughts on a coin like an XRP and Ripple? How positive you think it's going to move forward? Because it's all about trust. When you're sending money from point A to point B, and in the olden ways, you use like MoneyGram, Western Union, especially for someone like me who have family in Vietnam back 30, 40 years ago, we had to send it that way. Or they have remittance partners or little remittance places all over Vietnam. That's where I'm from. And we couldn't really trust them. This is how we used to send it. We used to send it, those bullion cubes, James? My dad used to fold up $50 bills and put them in a bullion, and he would send the whole bullion back to my grandmother and my aunt. And we would tell them in a note, the bottom ones taste better.
Oh my gosh, that's
Yes,
crazy.
and then they would get their money, and then sending it back through these remittance. If you used to send $100, $20 would have been lost because of the transaction fee, and then you have to buy a calling card, And the calling card, you have to call back and say, did you get the money? And how much did you get? And then now, we have other ways to send it through PayPal. We have, Cash App, we have Venmo, all these different transactional. But the first transactions that went through that, people didn't trust it because it was such a new technology that if I sent $50 to my friend to get him out of wherever it is, would it happen? And it worked. So this is where in a different paradigm shift where we're using digital assets to see if when we send it from one wallet, did it show up in the wallet? Did it show up? So we're kind of in that phase right now that is so uncertain, but it's not mass adopted yet. That's what I'm telling you. So that's my thought. So what do you think of XRP?
No, I mean that's a. I have a couple really great analogies to that, but I can't go. So what you're talking about, XRP is a token, XRP, and the name of the company is called Ripple, and they have come up with a way to transfer money at almost any size, anywhere around the world, instantaneously, through their product. So when I talk about again the Trump token not having a lot of value, there's nothing behind it. Ripple is a business that you can move money around the world. It's one of those that was built out, and they got sued by the SEC, and it really stopped them, stymied them from trying to build their business model. There's still a lawsuit right now in the Southern District of New York against what they were doing, and I don't know what's going to happen with it. There's rumor that it's going to get dropped here soon. Most likely it does. But going back to your point, Credit, because it's a great question, they were building something. Now, are they going to survive like Yahoo and Amazon survived in the 2000s? I don't know. Will somebody else come up with a better product for payment transfers? I don't know. Is there somebody out there building something right now? You better believe it. So, will Ripple win? I can't answer that question. I personally don't own it. I'll tell you that. I'm looking to see what options are out there. But yes, but what you're talking about is a perfect example of what I just brought up, where they were building something unique and the banks were afraid of it, obviously, because you think about it, you can go around a bank, you can use unlimited amount of money, and they ended up getting lawsuits brought against them by the SEC for various other reasons. My analogy was very similar to your Credit. Is like we had I think I told this last time I was on this podcast. We had a nanny in our family for at least 16 years who's fantastic, and she's from El Salvador. And over the years, she sends back remittances to her family, maybe $100 a week or something of the sorts. Maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, I started to talk to her about Bitcoin. And she said, "Oh, yeah, Bitcoin. I don't speak Spanish, but she's like, yeah, Bitcoin. We say it. I can't even say it in Spanish properly. Sorry." She was using Bitcoin to send back to her family. And think about it. If you use, MoneyGram or one of the, it's 5%, 10%. When you're sending $100 back to a family in El Salvador, every dollar matters. Bitcoin for free. And what they did in El Salvador, President of El Salvador, he turned half of his strategic reserve U.S. dollars into Bitcoin about 5 years ago, and that's grown almost 2 times. Okay, one, two. He asked every resident, a citizen of El Salvador, open a digital wallet. Many of them did, and he gave them all $25. It's just so simple to send right out of the treasury of the El Salvadoran government. 90% of the folks took that $25, they converted it into U.S. money, and they spent it. But they have wallets now. So my nanny, Tona, who's the most amazing person in the world, was sending that money to her family, $100 a week, and they wouldn't cost her a dime. Now Bitcoin would vacillate and move in value, but over time, when that stops happening, you're going to get rid of it. Basically, put MoneyGram out of business. I don't even think they even existed. Why would you use MoneyGram when you can use anything else? It's cheaper, and you're going to see Bitcoin. That's my point of being peer to peer anywhere in the world, and it's permissionless. Nobody can stop it. So she's doing it and has been doing it for 4 or 5 years. And if you look at what's happening in El Salvador, their country has gone from being a really, really dangerous place to a very safe place where a lot of people want to move and live now, because they have a currency, or they use U.S. dollars, but they use Bitcoin as a reserve currency to support their dollar and the value of land and the value. It's just become. You speak to the president, Naive Bukele or something like that. He took a risk, and that country around, and that's something I think Trump sees, the administration sees, and there's real opportunity for us to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve, very similar to what's happened in El Salvador. And then I'll say one thing, and I've been saying this for years: the country that prints their own money, I don't care what it's worth. it could be worth 1,000,000 pesetas could be $1, and they print 10 trillion pesetas and they buy Bitcoin, is going to make a fortune. They're just going to print their money and buy as much as they possibly can. And it hasn't happened yet. I kind of did in El Salvador, but they use US dollars. But that's something that we got to watch for. It could happen. Look at the Russian rubles. It's basically worthless. Putin could print as much as he wanted and start buying Bitcoin. So that doesn't happen. But I do feel like this administration now has set up this commission to look at all these options. We don't move that fast in our country, which is good. We look through things and we try to analyze it and try to come up with solutions. But I do think that this is a good solution. But I may also add Bitcoin only. Right? There's 50,000 tokens out there. We don't need to buy what they call shit coins. We need to own Bitcoin because it is really designed to be a reserve asset. And I hope that's where I hope that's where we go in the future.
Well, no, you can't leave us with that. What's the difference between your term, shitcoin, and a Bitcoin?
Yeah,
What do you mean by that?
I'm going to use Trump's coin as an example. He launched 250 million coins to start with, and there's going to be 1 billion launched over the next 5 years. All right, that's just a massive amount of supply, right? And he can put out as much as he wants. I just threw my pen against the wall. I mean, he can launch as much as he can put out as much as he wants. Bitcoin, it was built into the algorithm. It was built into the white paper that will only be 21 billion. They've tried to create another one called Litecoin and it didn't go anywhere. So this is where Bitcoin has that advantage to be limited in supply, significant amount of demand, and over time should go higher. This is Michael Saylor's entire investment thesis, right? I mean, if it is actually digital real estate, why would you not try to acquire as much of it as you possibly can?
No, I agree. You're definitely enlightening me to a lot of things today. Before we get too far off, I wanted to touch back for anybody that might be listening and interested. I didn't realize that you could use Bitcoin in place of that when you send the money back and forth, like Tona did. Where would someone that's never heard of that before, where do they go to do something like that?
You can buy Bitcoin at Coinbase. I use Kraken. You can use somebody help me. I'm blanking on all the different exchanges. There's a bunch of exchanges out there. They're very, by the way, in 2001, many of them went bankrupt. Like FTX was a big exchange. They went bankrupt. But Coinbase is available. Kraken's available too. There's probably crypto.com available where you can buy Bitcoin. And what it'll do is it'll create a Bitcoin wallet app. I use Kraken, for example. You buy a Bitcoin wallet, and then you find out the Bitcoin wallet of the person you want to send it to. So, for example, in El Salvador, I'm going to tell you there's 2 or 3 million people who have a Bitcoin wallet, and they have an address. And my wallet will send it to your address. And those addresses literally happen in seconds. Yeah, if somebody had a Bitcoin address, I could send you some Bitcoin right now and show you how it works. It's really simple. And you can use US dollars. You can buy Solana, which is another token, and swap it to Bitcoin. You can buy Ethereum and swap it to Bitcoin. I mean, on these exchanges, not only can you buy it, but you can swap back and forth between different types of tokens. And the good news, and then again, these exchanges are not that regulated, right? Like stock markets exchanges are, or like the New York Stock Exchange obviously is very regulated. These are things that need to happen in the future so people understand what these exchanges are doing. Coinbase charges really high fees. And this is back in the day when you would buy 1,000 shares of stock and you pay $60 for it. Now, $3. That's what's happening at these exchanges. So as exchanges start to compete with each other and more of them pop up, the prices will come down. But that's how you do it. I don't know if that answers your question, but you need a wallet, put Bitcoin in the wallet, and you send it to another person who has a Bitcoin wallet.
Pretty simple. When it's that simple, one thing that I think a lot of people like myself get concerned about is just the human error, right? It's so important now to make sure that you don't lose these numbers, that you don't have a clerical error. Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Like mine are held in an exchange, but a lot of people take them off an exchange and they put them into what looks like a thumb drive. One's called like on it. I think it's called a Zephyr. There's a lot of different thumb drives. They're hard drives where you put your Bitcoin on it, and those are people that want to own it and hold it. They don't want to sell it. They're not using it as a medium of exchange. They want to own it and hold it. So it's kept in a secure format. I know when I log into my Kraken account, I have to log in with my my login, and I have 2FA connection as well. So they're in pretty safe places. But you're right. You have to make sure you're sending it from one wallet to the right to the right person's wallet. If you send it to the wrong wallet address, you lose it. So you have, like I said, there's 4 million of Bitcoin that are missing. Those are people who. There's a famous guy in Scotland who has like $3 billion worth of Bitcoin on a thumb drive, and he threw it out, and it's in a waste.
It's a garbage dump, right?
Garbage dump, and he literally wants somebody to pay $1 billion to go through that. He'll pay them $1 billion to go through it to find that thumb drive. The problem is he's not willing to pay the money. He's willing to give you the money to find it. But I'm just saying, that is a problem. I mean, but of all the years I've done, I've never had a problem with sending something to the wrong address. If you put a wrong letter in there, it'll get. So in the future, you probably won't send it to an algorithm or a numbers and letters. It'll be Wendy's wallet, and it'll just go right into Wendy's wallet.
Right.
Daphne's wallet. It'll just go right in there, and it'll be easier or you guys can send it to each other. It'll be easier to do it versus just having it sent to a number and but all that's going to change.
James, I'm excited.
Just real quick, so the fires that took place in LA, you have Malibu, you have Pacific Palisades and all that. A lot of these people had it on a drive, the thumb drive, like you said, and they put it in a fire, safe. It burned everything. So what is I know. So now the supply, as every incident that happens, whether it's the Titanic going down or whatever, the supply is going to go down. It's guaranteed to go down. Somehow somebody does something crazy. The value is going to go up. What are some of the assurances that people could do? Because I know sometimes they put it through a trust and that the attorneys that have half of the code and somebody else has the other code and their dog has a tattoo on their ass for the rest of the code. So what is your Luna, my dog? Yeah, what is your recommendation to kind of secure that?
I love tattooing. I think that's
a great one, Credit. I love that.
all of that. My poor dog hates me already. I'm not sure if you appreciate that. There are custody solutions by companies that will guarantee the safety of your Bitcoin. So if you say you own $5 million worth of Bitcoin, custody at trying to think of the name of there's a bunch of them out there, and they will guarantee you that you will not lose the value of that Bitcoin. When you want it, say you need $500,000, they will send it to your address, and then hopefully at that point you convert it to US dollars, and you have that money available for you to use and it goes into your bank account. The honest truth, something else we haven't talked about, is I believe in the next probably 5 or 10 years, you won't quote things in US dollars. You'll be buying a house, say Bitcoin's $1 million, 1.3587645 Bitcoin. Or it's also called a Bitcoin has what's called a sat. So there's 1 million sats to every Bitcoin. So you might own 50,000 sats, which is worth like probably $100, and you'll send those sats around. So the answer to your question is, it's a good question. There are organizations out there that will secure the Bitcoin for you if you have a significantly large part. And then back to the Sob 121 problem, right? If banks can now custody Bitcoin, and if banks are smart about it, they'll create a custody solution that's almost 100% secure, 100% secure, so that you'll know when you give JP Morgan your 10 million in Bitcoin, it's there. If you need some money, they're going to loan you $1 million, right? Well, you couldn't do that before. Now that's wide open. I mean, I'm surprised. The community is really surprised that we haven't seen a bigger move in Bitcoin. Now, you're gonna hear the bigger banks starting to talk about custody Bitcoin on their balance sheets. It's going to happen, and you're going to be able to borrow against it. So I think that answers the question, Credit. But there were a lot.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the audience, Daphne or Wendy? Because we want to wrap this up. we're kind of getting close to that time, and then kind of introduce people for next week, to come back and talk more about business. But this has been such an enlightening conversation because it's so relevant with all the crypto, Bitcoin, um, AI, and you have Nvidia going down and all this. But it comes an opportunity. People are waiting for opportunity. Now it comes. People need to jump in because they can get more of something. And this is not financial advice because I'm also licensed and bonded, but do your homework assignment. Make sure that it's something that you want to get involved in, that you're willing to let go, because it is a bit risky, but with risk comes reward. It just depends on your appetite. But Wendy, Daphne, anything else? Any other questions?
I would just remind everybody just to, again, talk to your own financial advisor.
Yes, absolutely. And you can check the chat. I believe Nigel put all of Jim's information on how to get in touch with him. Unfortunately, we were not able to pin your information at the top, but we will definitely be having Jim back to discuss more of the Bitcoin progress and all the things with the new administration. And I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to ask too many people from the audience. And I did want to tell you that you are going to have to add to your accounts, all your X accounts and Instagram and all, that you are now what they call a finfluencer. Did you hear about this? I just heard about this today. So you are a financial influencer now, since you have been talking on our podcast. Have you heard of this, Jim? You're a finfluencer.
All right.
I'm going to use that. That's my official new term.
I saw that today, term coming out of, because there's so many people seeking financial education, maybe not advice, because like Jim says, not allowed to do that, but just education.
If your dog buys coins because she heard this, and Luna does have quite a bit of XRP and Doge and all these Pepe, so it's no liability because it's a dog. So I just want to say you can get a wallet for your dog, and it is fully fine to do that.
Well, thank you, Jim, for coming today. We certainly appreciate all the time you spent with us. And I'm not sure if we're going to have a Ream next week credit, because we're having the TV show, the AGTV, we will definitely not be having it at the time that we normally do. It's possible that we will change it to a different day next week. So be looking follow all of us. By the way, follow all of the hosts on Instagram, Twitter, and their socials, so that you can find out the details of where and when the Power Hour will be each week. But typically we are every Tuesday at 5 Eastern time. So listen, Jim,
guys, I'm not a financial advisor, and so I can give advice right now. You can take it or leave it. If you want to buy this stock called Galaxy Digital, I believe it'll be listed in the NASDAQ within the next 90 days. Jim can't say anything about it, but I followed this for the last 5 years, and I recommend it. I don't say it's going to go up or down, but it's kind of one of those things. If you don't own one of these companies, I think you're crazy. So Galaxy Digital, find it on the Canadian exchange. You can buy it under the symbol BRPHF. If you do that, I think you'll be very happy in 5 years. I think that's why Wendy married me, because I had her buy it 5 years ago.
I do like that one. Obviously, I can't make any suggestions of that kind of thing.
Okay, so here first.
Credit like XRP. I mean, there's so many options out there, and that's the thing, is trying to determine which one is the best for you. So definitely seek your financial advisors out for that.
And one more time, I want to shout out our very special guest today. James, you certainly, like I said, you enlightened me, and you delivered in such a fun way. It was easy to gobble it all up. I can't wait to hear more. But I just want to remind people where they can find you, and that's at Sullivan Wood Capital Management. Is that sullivanwoodcapitalmanagement.com, sir?
It's sullivanwood.com.
sullivanwood.com. Thank you.
And we want to thank everyone for coming onto the podcast every Tuesday at 5 p.m. This really makes us so happy, and it's about to blow up, guys. And so we appreciate each and every one of you for showing up early, for showing up on time, for showing up late. At least you're here. And
showing up at all.
And sharing the room. And we do a lot of reminder posts on Twitter and on Instagram. So follow us so you get up to date stuff. We do have in-person events coming up, and we'll let everybody know when the next in-person events that, Daphne, myself, Wendy, and any of our guests have, because meeting people in real life is such a treat. I just spent time with Wendy and Rhett this past weekend with their friends. It was a blast. We did like a 48 hours just partying, hanging out, having dinner, and just getting to know each other better, because it boils down to the people that you surround yourself with, and the networking that takes place. But also, what do you do when you meet people? You don't just end it there. That's where it begins. And that's why part of what we really encourage people in groups like this, especially on Power Hour, is to get to know the people that are in the room, follow them, send them a message, have the discussion off of this app, because of what you started here. Can carry that off, and contact the special guests like James if you have any questions, or if you want to get involved or be a client or whatever it is. It's all there for you.
Absolutely. So, and Jim, I know you had a call that you needed to get on, so we will start closing down the room. I did want to also say a quick special thank you to Paul and Nigel on our tech team, who always are here for us every week, and we definitely could not run this room without them. So, with that being said, hey everybody, just say everybody that's can give me a smile and keep your eyes open. I'm doing a screenshot.